Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Sweet Combat Season 1, Episode 3. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're picking up where the last episode left off, and obviously, Tiana's grateful for everyone's help. And even Queen trying to offer her help, use like, hey, you have to, once you get better at combat, you'll be able to defend yourself. You need to be able to defend yourself. He's like, I appreciate that, and you're concerned of your advice, but I just have no interest in fighting. Like, he's just like, that's probably just going to cause more problems. So, like, he doesn't want to go down the route of violence. And so he wants to just walk away. And they're like, then if you don't want to learn how to fight and you have no interest in it, why'd you come to a combat-orientated college? And it's like, I needed the scholarship. And you see that look on Queen's face, like, oh, like because she hasn't really bothered to really learn his circumstances. And so even Yanan and Xiaomi are like, oh man, I kind of feel bad for him, because it's like, right, the food delivery situation kind of went kaput. He called one customer, they got pissed at him. Turns out one of his other deliveries, interestingly enough, ended up being Yu's brother. I'm like, that's interesting. And the moment he was so excited, he's like, I knew it. Finally got him. And so when Tion comes up to apologize, he's like, I've been ordering KFC for 2 months, 27 orders just for this moment. I'm like, you are so petty. He's like, because the whole thing is like, right, like, you don't have to pay. Like, it's a whole thing of like, oh, you have to deliver in a certain amount of time. And apparently Tion's really good at what he does, so he's never had like a broken record streak. I mean, even in this occasion, it's like, I've ordered 27 times and I've always gotten it, but this time I get to load it over your face. Now you're gonna have to post something online about not being the fastest deliverer. I'm like, he's so petty. He wanted this victory so much, which is so it plays into the character, because even from the webtoon, like, her brother is very childish in a lot of ways. I mean, he tries to be mature because a lot of stuff is left on his shoulders, and we even get that this episode. Like, yes, he can be mature in some capacities because it's like, hey, I'm supposed to be eventually taking over the family business, but he is at the end of the day a kid. We don't know how old he is. He's probably just a high schooler. He's definitely younger than you, but I don't know like by how much, and like whether he's like a high schooler or whatever his circumstances are. But like, he acts very childish and kiddish like that. Like, oh, like the childlike stuff comes out in a moment like that, And Queen came up and saw like her brother kind of berating him, and she like pulls on his ear and is like, leave him alone. And it's like, yeah, he's like a junior at my school. And it's like, well, junior or not, he's like, junior or senior doesn't matter. He needs to like pay for the fact is he didn't deliver on time. I'm like, he's so annoying. And so like Tion's like, right, there's someone else that's coming along to deliver your food, and he leaves. And the whole situation kind of struck a chord with Queen, because later on she's at home, she's like, why am I so bothered by him? Because she's thinking about what Yanan said, and like, why does like what he says, some new guy at the school, why does what he say bother you so much? Even she's like, yeah, why does it get under my skin so much? And she's so frustrated by it. So later on, like the next day, her brother's like, I heard you screaming. She's like, I had a nightmare. He's like, oh, okay. So because like they ultimately ended up having this conversation about how, because he's teaching like the people at work, like, oh yeah, like how to be more youthful, and she's like, yeah, that's not really an important skill. He's like, well, it is in business wise, but it's also like as someone in your 20s, someone who looks 20 but you're not really that grown up, it's supposed to be something you're supposed to have, but it seems like something you're kind of missing. And now that ends up being this kind of complex she has the entire episode. It's like, is it something I'm missing? Like, she has to be like, no, I'm cool, I got things under control. Like, she's second guessing herself. Like, she had never realized like how much like maybe she was missing out on certain things, or like, oh, like she not really comparing herself to other people, but it's like, am I not normal? Am I a weirdo? I mean, it also comes into play with the whole notion of once again being called a monster. Like, it did something to her psyche, and now all that's coming up. She had never really given it much thought before, but now because of Tian, it's getting like brought up again. And like I said, I thought it was so interesting, because I brought it up in a previous episode, maybe episode 1, maybe it came up in episode 2, but the whole uncle thing of like, oh yeah, that was definitely not a thing with Queen's story in the webtoon. So giving her that, I thought was kind of interesting, because it seems like he was fundamental to her upbringing, because she lost him fairly young. She was still young, dealing with the whole like being a monster thing, like being able to be like, oh, like I had to dress like a boy and act like a boy, but now that my brother was born, I could just be a girl, and having to adjust to that. Now, am I a weirdo? Am I a freak for that? Am I a monster? And her uncle's the one that made her feel okay and be comfortable, and say, hey, if any kids up there call you a monster or a freak, I'm gonna teach them a lesson tomorrow. And she's like, no, I don't want you to do that. but it's just like she just thought like it's probably weird that like I'm dressing like a girl for the first time, and she felt weird, but he made her feel okay and safe, and that's why he was so important to her. And so to lose him, especially because he was kind of like, I don't know if voice of reason, but he really approached her from kindness. I think he's the one that really instilled in her she can be who she wants to be. He gave her permission. He allowed her to be herself, whereas like everyone else gets to decide who she gets to be. All my parents, they get to raise me as a boy. I don't get to be the girl I want to be. I don't even really get to know what it's like to really even be a girl, even know the difference until my brother was born. And then I get told like, yeah, we raised you as a boy, but now you just get to be a girl. So that's frustrating. Your grandfather took away the one gift your uncle gave you before he died, and like because he believes it's going to make you weak. It's going to be interesting to see if they, I don't think they're going to play into, because you don't get much of Queen and her grandfather's dynamic. You get a little bit of it, but she's able to play him like a fiddle. Like she'll give him a massage. That's like one of the few interactions you have between Queen and their grandfather. You see some of the interaction between her brother and their grandfather, where it's just kind of like, oh, he falls in line. And it seems like Queen kind of has that in this regard, where it's like, yeah, she like kind of falls in line with what her own grandfather wants. So I don't know if they're going to give him that soft, like some of the silly elements we got introduced to him in the webtoon. I don't know if they're going to give it to him in the live action or not. So what's also interesting too, and kind of tying Tion and Yu's story together, is the fact is, and that's also really quick, I want to talk about it too. It's fascinating they call her by her name more often than not. They don't always like refer to her as Queen. They just call her by her name, like Fong Yu, which I think is so interesting because like most of the, like, yeah, they call like Queen by her real name most times. That's why even I recall her as a Queen, because like her real name is like, I forgot. It's like Insui or something like that. I'm butchering it, but it's something with an I. It's like I in something, but I forgot, because her and her brother have similar names. But yeah, like she mainly, like almost everyone refers to her as Queen. Very rarely throughout the series would you call her by her, and this, she goes by her real name more than she does Queen. So I think that's so interesting. I mean, also, like, I'm sure, like, when people use Queen, it, like, especially recently, over the course of the show so far, like, that's kind of got racing through our mind of, like, oh, yeah, I've been treated as, like, a queen. I don't like that, because it's being seen as a bad thing now. But either way, the point I was about to make is, like, she went to pay her uncle a visit at the graveyard, and it turns out that the person she came to see is the same person. I thought Tion was there to see his father, but it's like, well, this is not them at home. He's in a new city, so I mean, who knows where that city is in comparison to where they were living at the beginning of the series, but came to visit his grave too. So it's like, oh, you have that connection, which is so fascinating. And neither one of you, like, I think Tion kind of knows, because he sees like a car pull away, and I don't know if he knew, like, he saw the person walking away, but I don't know if he immediately registered that it was Queen. So it's interesting that they have a connection to, like, her uncle is like someone that Tion knew. Maybe he was a friend of his dad's or something. I don't know. I wonder will that tie into the boxing stuff or not. They also played with an element in this episode that's kind of taken from the webtoon. Like, as I brought up in a previous episode, that there was a situation where, because his siblings are young, his brother in particular would constantly nitpick about, like, right, I want this particular food because mom would fix it for us all the time. And I talked about it in the webtoon at one point in time, like, because he's just frustrated and it's just so complicated, Jaegu, like, yells at his brother. In this case, he doesn't, despite his brother being like, I want this, you kept promising this and this, but mom would always give us this, and he just walks away from the table, but his sister stays there eating the egg. It's like, we have to eat the same things over and over again, and Tion feels bad. It's like, he doesn't yell at his brother, he's just frustrated, like, I can't give my brother, like, my siblings, they deserve better. I want to give them good stuff. I want them to be able to kind of eat the stuff they like, because he had thought about earlier on, like, oh, like, giving them KFC was like a reward, because it's like not something he can do often, and it's like, oh, here, let me, like, feed you, like, obviously it's something you love. And now he just feels like he's failing his siblings and, like, right, not being able to get them what they want. So he has some money and he goes off and tries to buy them food, but by the time he gets back, they're already asleep. But he also looks at his brother's drawing, and it's like, oh, I'm sorry, bro, I love you. And I'm like, yeah. That's the thing of, like, it isn't like a situation of, like, he has contempt for his siblings or anything like that. He loves his siblings. It's just, once again, struggling to make ends meet. And it's like, because usually, like, they're typically, his siblings are voices of reason for each other. Like, when one of them kind of acts out a little bit, the other one reins them in, being like, no, stop it. bro is doing the best he can. Like, so they have that dynamic. We haven't really leaned into it too much, but I'm curious to see if the show does. But it is the thing. But he came to it in his own, or at least what we know that he came into it his own, of apologizing with the drawing, saying like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry, bro," drawing his brother on a bike. So some other interesting developments is like the competition thing comes up because the principal is kind of chastising them for what they did. It's like, oh, like, you know, you should be commended for what you did. It's like, well, if we keep going to you, like, and you're getting thanked for everything, what's the point of the police? But then Tion is like, no, don't blame them. None of them are at fault. They just came to save me. Like, you're going to punish me, won't punish me. And I love the director being like, what? Tion, why would we punish you? You're a freshman, and, you know, the fact is you held out as long as you could till the others showed up. The fact of the matter is you should be rewarded for it. So the fact of the matter is, it's like you will be taught by someone how to defend yourself. You'll be able to grow stronger. And you three, your punishment is you have to be a coach for Tion. And it's like, wait, why is the reward and the punishment the same thing? And he's like, yeah, it's all about perspective. Like, all roads kind of lead to the same thing. Obviously, Xiaomi is excited. She's like, oh my God, yes, I'll teach you. It's going to be so exciting. It's just kind of more of a, like, it is what it is type of situation for Queen and Yanan. So they're like, all right, I'll train you. It's like, no, I'll train you. It's like, we'll work out your schedule. But he's like, no, man, I just don't have enough time for that. So, but thank you. And even Queen's trying to look away like, oh, it's not an issue. But then she gets the idea. It's fascinating because it's different circumstances that lead to it. The end result's the same of her choosing Tion as her final opponent in the match. So, like, they go up against each other in the final match, and which causes issues everywhere else because you have a character like Zhao Feng, who's like, who is this guy? Who is this Tion dude that suddenly gets to jump, like, come out of nowhere and automatically get to match with Queen? And I've been the one begging for a match, and she won't. I mean, I'm sure she won't appreciate being labeled as, oh, I'm begging for a match, but it's like she gets to, like I don't get the honor of fighting her again. Like, all right, you got me in that fight at the beginning of the series. Doesn't matter. Like, it's a rematch. I'm going to win this time. You know, and I'm sure they're going to go into it a little bit more about how and why she has such beef with Queen. Because they dabble in that in the webtoon of, like, what that stems from. Like, why she has, like, such a, not inferiority complex, but, like, she has issues with Queen as a fighter. I'm curious to see if they'll, like, this live action will, like, cover that in any way. But yeah, like, Queen in her own way thought she was helping because she thought, like, right, Tion he won't, like, take the training any other way. But if I basically put him in a situation where he literally has no choice, she thought she was doing what was best for him. It's like, yeah, in her own way, she was trying to help out. She doesn't know how to help out in any other way. So, plus they're taking, like, a gender, I don't know if it's a gender equality class. It's a gender understanding class, something like that. And Xiaomi is, like, being studious about it. Like, Yanan's thinking, like, who cares? Gender doesn't matter. All that matters is your opponent. And it's like, everyone's like, yeah. But it's like, yeah, an opponent is fine. But the teacher's like, understanding your partner, like someone, like, you know, understanding and that like that I forgot the exact wording she used, but, like, being able to kind of not ebb and flow, but cohabitate the same, like, existence. Like, it's something that can do it will serve you longer in the grand scheme of life. It'll be something you can kind of take with you for, like, the rest of life. But Xiaomi, like, starts ripping into, like, Yanan and Queen about how, right, like, you guys don't really have, like, that, like, sweetness, that girl in you, but, like, Queen is like, I don't need that. But she starts contemplating it. Like, even to do her exhibition match, she's like, what did the teacher mean about, like, learning how to listen? Like, what does that mean? She's like, and I love when she matches over. She's like, see, I'm cool at this. But, like, what did the teacher mean? And I love that the entire, like, time, like, other people in the class, she's, like, leaning in, like, listening to them without letting them know. Because she brings it up towards, like, Yanan, because Yanan wasn't really listening during class. But it's like, wait, do you really want to know what the teacher taught? And she's like, what? No, why would I need something like that? That's stupid. Because she's trying to figure out, like, you know, what did the teacher talk about in class? Like, you know, because she wants to use those skills to, you know, help herself. Because she'd even talked about it when the director came, or she was thinking about it, like when the director came to her for her like exhibition match, that she's like, right, like, am I really not like girly enough? Like, I grew my hair out and everything. Like, I've done everything else to be like very like girly. And is that just like, do I not have that youthful like sweetness or whatever? Like, what, like the things that Zhao Mi seems to have in spades, do I not have that? Like, am I missing something that every other girl has? You know, because it's kind of, you know, your bestie is kind of in the same predicament. The only problem is Queen's very self-conscious about it. Even though she's self-conscious about it, she never lets it weigh her down. I'm talking about Yanan doesn't let it bother her, even though it irritates her when like Zhao Mi brings it up and other people kind of make her feel weird about not being girly enough. But typically, like, she's like, I'm fine being me. Queen kind of gets a little uncomfortable in her own skin about it. So I think it's just like, right, your best friend can't really help you because she's kind of going through it herself, just not to the same extent, not the same experience. So that's kind of like a fun dynamic about that whole situation. But either way, the problem is, like, even despite listening into some of the other students that are taking the same class, she can't understand it. And so when she runs into Tian later on, who's frustrated by the situation, because it's like, because Yanan tried to put it in perspective of, because like everyone's walking up to him like, oh my God, I'm so sorry for you. Here, like giving him an organ registration thing he needs to sign up for being Queen's opponent, and they're measuring his coffin. Essentially, it's just like everyone's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Some people are like, yeah, you got this, bro. Don't let anyone tear you down. Do your best. And other people are just like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, is there anything you need for us to visit and bring to your grave? I'm like, I love it. Yeah, like Yanan's like, yeah, she did it because that's Queen's way of being thoughtful. And for him, it's like, dude, I had to look after my siblings after school, and after work, like I don't have time to also put training on top of all that. So he tries to go to Queen and ask her, like, he because he has such a negative view of her, he doesn't realize, like, she's trying, once again, she's coming from a good place of she was trying to help. But it's like once he found it, he felt insulted, and then he kind of insults her in the process, so it makes her snap back. So that's, once again, it's just a complete, utter misunderstanding. And he's like, oh, you just want to, like, show off your queenhood. You want to embarrass me. And she's like, no, like, I want to help you. I think, no, this is where he brings up the fact that he has to look after his siblings. He doesn't have time for training. And she's almost like, oh, because she doesn't know his deal. She was even asking herself, like, what's his whole deal? I don't get it. So she doesn't have anyone to kind of investigate him for. Like I said, there's no Mr. Park, you know, that we're aware of, Mr. Park equivalency in this or not. But and it just came this back and forth that he's just like, he thinks she's just trying to be superior and just wants to kind of embarrass him. It's like, okay. She's like, fine, if you want to, just quit. And he's like, all right, I will. And she was almost like, wait, what? No, I didn't mean for you to actually do that. And she's like, damn it, you know? And now, because it's so frustrating, because it's like, oh, he's actually going to quit. So Yanan set it up. It was like, let's go by his work, and we can like, she's like, you don't even have, you could just stand there like a statue. I'll do all the talking, you know? It's like, but it's like, yeah, he's pretty impressive. He hasn't been living in a city that long, and yet somehow he's able to frustrate you, who's normally so cool as ice, that you are so frustrated that you want to blow up like a volcano. It's like, wow, she's like, that's actually pretty impressive. But by the time they go to KFC, it turns out he quit. It was more so because it was on a personal level. He felt like, right, it was my mistake, it was my fault, so I shouldn't work here. Because I'm sure, like, him failing a delivery, even though it was just like 1 or 2 deliveries. I mean, who knows how many deliveries that one was. So in his mind, it might have been like, it might not just have been that person she was on the phone with, or Queen's brother. There might have been like a few other deliveries made with that. So it's like, yeah, like, I screwed the pooch on this, and that's going to cost the business money. So it's just more like I'm sorry, I failed, and bounces. And they're both kind of like, wait, he quit? Like, what's he going to do? So what does Queen do later on? She goes to try and, like, make things right. And it's like, right, I need him to stick around. And it's like, she even said, like, right, if he quits, I'll be pissed. So she actually goes to a bike shop to try and buy him the best bike ever, which I'm like, once again, it's just the queen of it all. Of like, yeah, you're so, like, seems so, like, standoffish, but you're actually really a big old softy. Once again, the only person who really knows that is Yanan, because even Zhao Mi looks at it as like, oh, like, you're not very girl, like, you're standoffish, like, you're not as cute and adorable and pretty like me. Like, I'm bubble, sunshine, and rainbow. You're not. But like, Queen's a softie on the inside, so. We also go to another of the fighting colleges. It's the one that Zhao Feng goes to, and we get to meet the boxing club, which we meet the captain, Guanyan, which I'm like, wait, is he supposed to be like the Manon? Like, is he supposed to be like a version of Manon? It feels like that's who he's supposed to be. Because like Manon was like, I don't think they ever classified him as like the captain, though. I don't think he ever was. I think he was. Because in my head, I thought like Hieshin was like the captain of the boxing club, but maybe it was Manon. But he always had like a very cool demeanor. I mean, he's a very like cool in both his personality and just the way like he's got a swag about him. But he always has like a very cool demeanor. It seems like Guanyan kind of has that too, and just like the way like instead of like having like the beanie on like Manon does, he has like the headphones. And like he dresses very cool, but it seems like that's a version of that. He's supposed to be like an amalgam, probably like some version of Manon to some extent. So him and Zhao Feng show up at the where the preliminary rounds are held, just to be like, yo, I'm calling out Queen for a fight, but she's not there. It's like, well, fine, I'll fight Jing, and it's like, not Jing, Tian, and it's like, well, you can't fight him either because he's not here, and he should save his energy for the fight. So as his coach, and then Zhao Mi steps up as his other coach, we reject your need for a match. So they shut that down immediately. And staying on that a little bit, like going back to Queen, like she knows that the headmaster and the director are asking like, why are you so adamant about Tian being your opponent? But she's like, I don't want to like it's too embarrassing to admit her reasoning for it. It's not like, being open with people doesn't come easy to her. That's going to be an interesting change too, because I was thinking about this, and it's relevant now because it's come up in the webtoon. Queen never trained Jaegu. It was only Moon Young. It's mainly Moon Young. Dao Dao helps a little bit, but he mainly, like I said, he adopts a lot of boxing because like that's his fundamentals. Because, well, in the show it seems like it's his fundamentals, but also like Moon Young was the one that really taught him like boxing first. So he adopted other elements, like a little from the Taekwondo, a little bit from Queen and stuff, and just other fighters. But he really mixed in other martial arts to his, not just boxing, but he's mainly like I said, his fundamentals stem from boxing. So it's going to be interesting because I guess Queen will train him. Like I don't think they ever trained at all. Like I know he acts as a coach for her and Moon Young and Dao Dao, but he doesn't actually like get. Once again, it's mainly Moon Young who is his main trainer. So it's going to be interesting to see like if all three of them really like fully alternate being his trainer. Is going to be interesting. And since I talked about that, there's something else I actually forgot to bring up in correlation to Queen's brother. How him and Tian meet in this is so different from how how Jaegu meets Queen's brother, because it was like a pseudo match. It was like, hey, you're around my sister, I need to know if you're really capable or not. That's actually their first introduction, is through like a somewhat boxing match. And now to know that it's like through food delivery like this, it's such an interesting shift. It's complicated. It's got the same flavor to some extent of like, oh, I got to test you out, and in a weird way, like Queen's brother was testing him out in the live action too. So there's a flavor and sentiment that's there, even though the events are different. Like the vibe they're going for is of the same ilk, even though the events themselves are different. You also had this situation with Hao, who's so enjoying his time in university. He's like, oh, it's so good. It's like, the fact is I could enjoy 5 or some years there. And his mom's like, most people go for 4 years. Here you are trying to stay there for 5. What are you, an idiot? Are you stupid? And he's so excited because he's like, oh man, everyone's looking at me kind of like I'm a superstar. Once again, I find it so hilarious that Hao and Tian still have not crossed paths. Even though like Hao is in the same room as Zhao Mi, like at the end of near the end of the episode, when like Zhao Feng comes up for her challenge. I think that's so interesting because he's like, wait, it can't really get that dangerous because it's like, oh, I can join in if I want to, right? It's like in the preliminary matches, it's like I can sign up for it. She's like, yeah, like as long as you have like a medic and an ambulance on standby. He's like, it doesn't get that dangerous. So it's like, yeah, it depends on how, like, you know, how much they cut loose, I guess, but. Just another fun episode, dude. I'm so giddy about this. I'm so excited to jump into the next episode too, because I'm loving this. It's so much fun of like, what's the same, what's different, how we're going about this. It's so interesting knowing, like, you know, where everything goes, but seeing how the journey like in the show takes versus the webtoon, and just it's gonna be so interesting and fascinating to see. As like, you know, it's like, oh, Tion's attempt to leave the school, will it really go through? And it's like even the director trying to stop him, being like, I know you're worried about being beaten to a pulp and stuff, like, it's fine, I get it, you want to transfer. It's because it's like, why? I've given you everything, changed it, the bathroom, I've done this, I've done that, like, why do you want to leave? Don't leave. As like one of the few, now only one of 2 male students at the school, we're not about to lose a single one of you. We're gonna make sure you stay at the school. So like I said, I'm so excited to see where the next episode takes us. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.